So welcome everybody. I hope you're feeling a little more centered than you were when you first walked in. This is a technique I like to teach for busy people living in the world who have a lot of activity in their lives. Sometimes it's so difficult to sit down and just meditate. So it's very important to create the right conditions in the body first. Allow for the body to feel free of difficulties, and then the mind naturally settles. So it's a good technique to get some nice results. So today I'm going to give a talk, as Tina mentioned, about dealing with difficult people. I was a bit nervous actually when I started to receive a lot of emails and messages from people who'd heard about this talk, and they were telling me all of the difficult people in their lives and they wanted me to somehow touch upon these difficult people. And so I had one person sent me a message with many different types of people on there, and I thought, oh God, they're everywhere. And then another friend messaged me and said, is this good for children, difficult children? Oh, okay, right, see how that's going. And then another friend messaged me and said, I'm sending my partner. And I thought, hang on a second, have you thought about this? If you're sending your partner, who's the difficult person? Are they dealing with you, or are you trying to deal with them by sending them along? So I thought we'd start with just a couple of words of warning. So the first thing is, when I'm talking about difficult people, there is a very broad spectrum, and maybe you know, you can shout out some different types of difficult people that you have experienced in your life. Shall I start? People who order Hawaiian pizza, difficult. What else have you got? Is there anything worse than that? So, wait, okay, well, I'll do it myself then. Okay, so there's irritating people, yeah? It's people who are angry. There are people who are stubborn, who are intractable, who just won't do what you want them to do. There are people who are nasty, manipulative, hurtful. There are people who are brutal. There are people who are abusers. So this range of difficult people is not something that I'm able to talk about in this particular workshop. So that broader end of the spectrum, that narrow end of the spectrum, are those people who are nasty, malicious, abusive, controlling, toxic. They're not the people we're going to be talking about today. And I say that only because those people require very different approaches, and I'm very hesitant in just because of some of the messages I've received, people thinking that perhaps the advice that I give here can be used for some situations that maybe it's not appropriate. So there's a lawyer present in the room. This is my legal disclaimer. This is not legal advice. You know, this is not even psychological advice. What I'm presenting to you today is good sound advice from the Buddha and his disciples, and it will be helpful to you. But just to take on board, we're not going to be able to solve all of the difficult people in the world in this 2-hour session. So the other thing that I want you to take on board is this notion of difficult people. There's a little bit of a trick with this. So when we think about difficult people, what we're thinking about is other people, right? I could have just called the workshop dealing with people, but then you wouldn't have come because you're interested in the difficult people, and we all know that the difficult people are other people. We're okay. There's no problem with us. we're fine. And then, so we start off with this dilemma that we have this us and them mentality when it comes to difficult people. The second problem is that we try to solve difficult people. We try to fix difficult people. We look to solve those problems externally, not internally within ourselves. So because we start off thinking that difficult people are out there, we try to solve them out there. But I think when we think about difficult people, we're actually talking just about people who are sometimes difficult. So we don't think of ourselves as difficult people, but yet perhaps if we're really honest with ourselves, really honest, from time to time, even just for a millisecond, we might be difficult ourselves. And this is an important realization. This is an important aspect of ourselves to understand, because this is going to be the point where we can do some work on those difficult people within ourselves. So recognizing firstly that there are just people. Sometimes, from time to time, they are difficult. It's not that these people are difficult 100% of the time. It's not that these people are difficult to 100% of the people around them. We know from the difficult people that we have in our lives that even difficult people have friends. Even difficult people have good days. Even difficult people have moments where they're good people. In the same way, we have to recognize that us, who we consider as good people, can also be difficult. So this is the starting point. I want you to take a step back from this idea of this workshop being an opportunity to solve the difficult people in our lives, and an opportunity to look within yourself to see how you can deal with what happens when you encounter a person who you perceive as difficult. So there's a little bit, maybe it was false advertising, I don't know. If I said, you're difficult, come to my workshop, would you have come? No. So yes, we're looking at how to handle these experiences that we have in our life. And so we do feel though, don't we, that there are difficult people out there. And the way we detect this is by what happens when we encounter those people in our lives. And it's important to understand this process because it will give us insight into what is actually happening in that interaction. So what happens when you encounter a difficult person? Probably firstly you'll feel it somewhere in the body, some tension rising, shoulders becoming stiff. You feel your neck tight, your jaw will clench, your brows will furrow, and you just feel this response of what? Irritation, resentment, anger, hatred in the body. So when we think about experiencing difficult people, who is suffering? It's you. And where is the suffering happening? Internally. So this person out there may not be aware at all of their effect on you. So the one place that you feel it is internally. And once you understand that it's happening, you can understand these sensations of irritation, resentment, anger, hatred are being felt by you in this body. And if we're not very careful, these emotions will start to overpower our mind. Our thoughts stain our mind. So the more we ponder negative, unwholesome thoughts, so that will become the tendency of our mind. And you notice with these difficult people that you encounter in your life, or these people who are at times difficult, we tend to characterize them as difficult. So the more we see them, the more we encounter them, the more likely, because our mind is uncontrolled and we're allowing these experiences of these negative, unwholesome states to persist in the mind, the longer these states persist, the more likely we're going to persistently see that person as difficult, as a problem. So they're always going to be a difficult person, they're always going to be a problem. So we need to put some stopgaps into this process. What's actually occurring is the mind is experiencing aversion to an object. It's experiencing a wanting to move away from an object. It's an object of dislike, an object that causes us to move away from it. So you know, when you like someone, you want to be around them. When you don't like someone, you want to get away from them. Yeah? So you can see how it works. But what's actually happening in the mind is our mind is repeatedly returning to this aversion. It's a wrong kind of attention, ayoniso manasakara, wrong attention, unskillful attention. It's unskillful because it has many drawbacks. So when our mind returns over and over again to this negative aversion, it's like a nutriment, it's like food for our ill will. So the more we return to this object of negativity in our mind, we generate more and more ill will towards that. And ill will can be anything from mild irritation to frustration to outright hatred and anger. So if we don't catch it early enough, it's going to overwhelm the mind. And there's an interesting sutta the Buddha talks about 7 different types of drawbacks of a mind that is experiencing this anger. And the way the Buddha does it is quite interesting, because he says, these are the things that will make your enemy happy. So if we've got a difficult person in our life, the last thing we want to do is to let them know that they are affecting our mind, yeah? So these are the things that if we keep on reacting to these people, they will just be happy because they're seeing us suffer. So the first thing, and the Buddha quite cleverly appeals firstly to our ego, the first thing, if we have irritation, anger, hate in our mind, first thing is we look ugly. It's true, yeah, you've seen people who are angry, who are irritable, they look ugly, they look, you know, puffy and red in the face, they look angry, and they look kind of like a child having a tantrum. So the first drawback is that you look ugly. The second, and if this isn't reason enough to let go of your dislike of other people, then I don't know what is. So we look ugly. The second thing is we sleep badly. You know what happens when you have some difficult people in your life? You feel angry towards them, you feel resentment towards them, and you go to bed that night, you've had a problem during the day, a difficult person has irritated you, and you're up there on your bed trying to get to sleep, and you're just going round and round and round again, playing out this scenario all night long. You can't sleep because of the energy of the anger in the mind, really problematic for you. So the second thing is we can't sleep. Of course, if you don't sleep, you look puffy in the morning, even uglier. So the third thing is we don't profit. When the mind is full of anger and resentment, irritation, we don't profit. And you see this in interactions that you have with difficult people. You can't be bothered making a good thing of it. They can't be bothered, and you kind of end up not benefiting from your interaction. The fourth thing is we lose wealth. And this is kind of like, where are you going with this, Buddha? But when the Buddha was talking all those thousands of years ago, it wasn't that different to today. So if we get angry and irritated, if we throw someone's computer at them, or if we crash our car into their car, or whatever, we've got a difficult person, we want to deal with them through violence, or somehow, then we also will lose wealth. At the time of the Buddha, if you got in trouble with the law, you had to pay the king. So even today, if we cause an accident or cause some trouble, burn someone's house down, whatever, do some anarchy on their front lawn, we'll have to pay. So this is, we lose wealth that way. I don't know how many I've done, must be 5, 4? Fifth one. The fifth one must have something to do with it's very difficult. I just skipped to the one that I can remember, and that is that we will create negative, unwholesome actions, which will create negative, unwholesome results. So, and now I've remembered the other ones. We lose friends, we lose family. People don't want to be around us when we've got this anger, this irritation in us. So have you experienced this? If you've had a hard day at work with this difficult person, you go home and you vent to one of your friends or family and you complain? You know, it's just like someone just kind of like dumping on you. And you feel it's kind of like this wave of negativity and you're kind of like, oh, yuck. You just want to get it off you. So this is what happens, we take that with us. And so for a person who experiences a lot of negativity in our mind, then we end up putting it out to other people. There's nothing like misery shared. You know, we love to share our misery. So we lose our friends, we lose our family, they don't want to be around us, and we develop a bad reputation. People talk about us, you know, if we're angry or if we're difficult, people talk about us, they don't want to be around us, and we get a bad reputation. And then the seventh one is that these unwholesome actions cause unwholesome results. So these are 7 things that pleases our enemy. So if a difficult person wants to ruin our lives and they see any of these things happening in us, they're like, yes, I've won. And the reason I talk about these things is because when we experience difficult people, if we are not careful, we will become difficult people in response. So we've got to be very aware of our reactions to other people. It's very easy when you experience a difficult person to become nasty. It's very easy to become angry. It's very easy to push them. It's very easy to run away from them and just be cold. So we have to be careful of our reactions, because if we're not careful, we will become difficult people to others. So this is this background of why it's important to become aware, firstly, that we also can be difficult, that other people are just like us, experiencing difficulty in their lives, and sometimes good, sometimes bad, sometimes who knows, and we ourselves can't judge them as purely difficult people, 100% full-time difficult, because it's simply not true. It's a distortion of our perception, and if we're not careful in responding to them, then we ourselves become more difficult. If we ourselves become more difficult in this way, we will allow these negative emotions, unwholesome states, to take over our minds. And so these are the drawbacks of thinking that the problem is them and I'm okay, or that difficult people happen to me and I have no control over how I respond. So I wanted to challenge that. So that's the first part of the talk. Second part of the talk is what we can do about it. So we need some strategies. Yeah? We need some different ways to respond when we encounter difficult people in our lives. And the first method I'm going to explore with you is a simple task. We've already started doing it, of changing our perception. So perception is actually a very powerful thing in our minds. It colours completely the way we see things. It's one of the vipalasas, a distortion that we experience. Unless we are completely enlightened, our perception is always going to be flawed. It's never going to be perfect. And we know this, as I've already said, one person who we perceive as difficult will be loved by other people. So you think, is this person, you know, am I seeing them the way other people are seeing them? Are they seeing them the way I see them? You know, you have friends who your friends like and other people don't like. So This is just how it is. Our perception distorts our view of different people. So sometimes we see people as problems. So this is our perception of them. So it's important to be aware that if we want to, we can change our perception. And it's actually quite a wholesome idea. If you're constantly interacting with a difficult person, you're constantly perceiving them as a difficult person. So perhaps if you want to protect your mind from unwholesome states, anger, irritability, hate, then you need to change your perception. So how do you do that? The Buddha gave 5 examples, and he gave 5 examples of people and 5 different images. The first image is a monk who wears rag robes. So I have in my robes here these patches. In the times of the Buddha, this was made from rags you find on the street. So you have a rag robe wearing bhikkhu, like me, going around the streets, and you see a good looking rag, and you think, is it a good looking rag? I don't know. So you spread the rag with your foot, and you say, oh wait, there's part of that rag that is good, and part of that rag that is not good. It's a very simple image. So what do? You take the part of the rag that is good, and you leave the part of the rag that is not good. So when we encounter difficult people in our life, we take their good qualities and we hold them tight. We let go of their bad qualities. If we're really looking at someone, they're more complex than we allow it sometimes. People aren't difficult the whole time. People have redeeming qualities. So when we encounter a difficult person, we don't look at the way they're being difficult, we look at their good qualities. Everyone will have some good qualities. In this first example the Buddha gives, it's a person who has poor behaviour in their body, but their speech is okay and their mind is okay. So maybe someone who steals from time to time, or is harsh with their body, maybe hits something or someone, or whatever, some bodily action which is not good. This is something that troubles us when we see people doing bodily things. This is something that makes people difficult to us. The second example of the Buddha, actually this is Sariputta. The second example Sariputta gives is someone who has bad speech, so someone who irritates us through their speech. This is quite common. People will annoy us because of the things that they say. And if we're not careful, we respond badly. So with this kind of person, the Buddha uses an image of a pond covered in slime. What do? You're hot, you're thirsty. This is the image of anger in your mind. You're hot, you're thirsty. Anger makes us bubble inside with this hot, bubbling anger energy. And so we need to cool down, we need to drink. And so we see this pond covered in slime. We don't want to just put our face directly into this pond. We just gently push away the slime. And so this is the same as the rag. We push away the bad qualities and we drink in the good qualities. This is just a shift in perception that we're trying to do. The third person has bad bodily behaviour, bad speech, but from time to time they're a bit placid in their mind. They've got some good qualities in their mind. And this person, the Buddha says, is like a hoof print. We're hot, we're thirsty, and we see a hoof print in the dirt with a little bit of water in it. We're so hot, we're so thirsty, we need to drink. So we have to get down on our hands and knees and suck up that water, just as we need to suck up this person's good qualities. Why? If we don't change our perception of this person, then unwholesome, negative thoughts will continue to impact our mind. So we need to change our mind, look at those positive perceptions, even if we have to get down on our hands and knees to suck it up. So this is the length that the Buddha kind of recommends, Sariputta recommends that we go to prevent our mind from becoming overwhelmed by negativity. The fourth person is someone who has no redeeming qualities. So this is probably the difficult person we have in our life. Nothing good about them at all. Hard to see any good qualities, yeah? This is how we feel when we see a person who's difficult in our life. There is nothing good about them at all. So this person, maybe it's hard to, find something to suck up in terms of good quality. So it's a slight difference in how Sariputta tells us to manage this person. So we, instead of wishing, to indulge in their good qualities, instead we just wish them well on their journey. They're like a sick person who's travelling a desert road. They have no food, they have no medicine. Out of compassion, we think, may they find the things that they need in their life. Maybe I can't help them. May they find medicine. May they find refuge. May they be fine on their journey. So this is how we respond to a person that's difficult. Just by letting them be, wishing them well. And this alone is a powerful thing. We're not getting caught up. We're not trying to rescue this person. We're not trying to help this person. We're not trying to suck up their good qualities. We're just saying, good luck on your journey. So there's a letting go there, which frees up our mind, frees up our mental space, takes us away from negativity. The fifth person is quite an interesting one. The fifth person is someone who has good qualities, good quality of body, good quality of speech, good quality of mind. Perhaps it's someone like Buddha or a good teacher that we know. From time to time, we will become resentful towards that person. From time to time, even the most pure-hearted people will seem difficult to us. Perhaps it's even our parents, Perhaps it's someone who you hold in high regard. So when this person becomes difficult to us, it's very easy, there's a make or break situation there, where if you're not careful, this negativity could persist in your mind for a very long time, and that relationship will be poisoned. So the best thing to do is to let go quickly of this negativity. And the instruction Sariputta tells us is to imagine a forest pool. Again, we're hot, we're thirsty, we need to cool down. And so we bathe in this beautiful, cool water of this forest pool. We delight in this person's good qualities. And afterwards, we get out, we lie down on the bank, and we just bask in this person's good qualities. In this way, we protect our mind. We protect our mind from negativity, unwholesome states. Who knows where these negative, unwholesome states will take us? Does this make sense to you? Changing perception, letting go, and letting go as quickly as possible. And this is important because when it comes to perception, our perceptions can very quickly become quite solid. So the Buddha says there's 3 types of people in this world that are like inscriptions. The first is an inscription carved in the rock. So sometimes when you have negative people in your life, difficult people, you carve a deep line in a rock and it's there forever. You meet them once and they're always a difficult person. They're never going to be liked by you. So this is like an inscription in the rock. The second type of person is an inscription, a line drawn in the sand. So the sand will eventually be washed by the wave of the ocean, or the wind will blow that line. And so it's like this, some people, when you encounter someone difficult, you let go quickly enough of this anger, this resentment, this irritation in your heart. But the best type of person, like an inscription, is the line drawn on water. So it lasts just a very short amount of time. So when we practice like this, the resentment, the irritation doesn't linger in our hearts. In this way, you protect your mind. You don't allow anger, resentment, negativity to stay in the mind for a long time. So this changing perception is the first strategy that we can use to deal with difficult people. So far, we haven't had to tell them at all anything. We haven't tried to control them. We haven't tried to change them. We haven't become a difficult person in order to deal with them. We're just working internally with our own perceptions. And I think what happens with this practice is, if you start to pay attention to the positive attributes of a person, you'll start to see that person in more positive ways. You won't keep on going through that cycle of repeatedly paying attention to that aversion, which causes the hate to have that nutriment which grows in your mind. So instead, we just pay attention to the good qualities, and this will grow. We'll start to see more and more good qualities in that person. So it's a very powerful strategy to deal with difficult people. So that's the first strategy. Second is to become an optimist. It's worth a try, hey? I'm going to tell a few stories today. There's a wonderful story about a Venerable Punna, who was around at the time of the Buddha, and he was an enlightened monk, and he was zealous, and he wanted to go off to the boondocks, somewhere very far away, to go and teach the people there the Dhamma. And the Buddha heard about this, and he said to Punna, the people in that place are very rough. They might hassle you, they might abuse you. What are you going to do? And the Buddha and Punna said, well, Buddha, if they hassle me, if they abuse me, then I shall be very happy. They're very good people in that place. They're very good people. At least they're not throwing clods of earth at me. And the Buddha says, well, what if they start throwing clods of earth at you? Well, then, in that case, they're very good people. At least they're not throwing rocks at me. What if they start throwing rocks at you? Well, at least they're not throwing weapons at me. Well, what if they start throwing weapons at me? Well, at least they're not punishing me with sharp weapons. What if they punish you with sharp weapons? Well, then, at least they're not killing me. Well, then, what if they should kill you? Oh, well, many people look for an assassin to take their life, to end their life. I should be very grateful. Here, someone has come to kill me, and I haven't even asked for it. So there's a slight humour in this story, but also another warning, another legal disclaimer, that if you are in a relationship where people are throwing clods of earth or sharp weapons or hitting or abusing you, this strategy I don't think is really fit for our times. But the point of this story, and it is a story, it is meant to be slightly funny, it is meant to be a strategy for yourself, not a strategy for other people. The point of this strategy is things could always be worse, yeah? That's the whole point of this story. So if you are dealing with a difficult person who is playing Justin Bieber music at 12 o'clock at night, just think, how fortunate. At least it's not 3 a.m. and they're playing death metal. You can always think of a worse possibility than the one that you're experiencing. So yes, they might have stolen your car park again, but at least an elephant hasn't sat on your car. So the point of this strategy is not to just exist in some denial, delusion land, but to just know that things aren't always as bad as we make them out. Things could be worse. Have some gratitude for the situation that you have. Maybe it's not as bad as you think. It could always be worse. And a similar story is the story it's called the Dhammika Sutta, where this tree deva, do you know what a tree deva is? It's a spirit that lives in a tree. And this tree deva is guarding the sacred fig tree. and this fig tree has huge figs in it, and it exists in the royal compound, in the royal palace. And so one day, this naughty man, a difficult person, comes along and he thinks, oh, these figs look great. And so he starts eating the figs, and he eats and chomps and chomps and chomps the figs, has another, chomps, 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 has another, throws them on the ground, and then he breaks the branch of the fig tree and goes, oh, okay, well, and walks away and leaves. So half the fig tree has been eaten, and then the tree deva comes back and is very upset. She's so upset. Her fig tree has been ruined like this by this difficult person. She decides, okay, no more figs for you. And so she stops making figs in the fig tree. But people get very, very upset at this. It's important to note here that the deva has become a bit difficult too, by refusing other people access to her fig tree. But the king gets very upset and goes and talks to Saka, the ruler of the gods, and says, hey, tree deva, stop producing the figs. And Saka says, what? Stupid. Why? And he comes down and he sends a huge thunderbolt and he destroys the tree. So the tree deva, who thought they were having a problem beforehand, has now got an even bigger situation to deal with, and of course is crying and weeping. And the king of the gods, Saka, says, what did you expect? The fruit pickers come and they take the fruit. The leaf pickers come and they take the leaves. The bark pickers come and they take the bark. What else do you expect? And so the moral of this story is, yeah, people are irritating. People are problems. People make us upset. What do you expect? They come along and they pick at our peace. They come along and they take our calm. What else do you expect? This is what people do. So there's a lowering of expectations. And this is another strategy that we can employ. When we have difficult people in our lives, we can lower our expectations, knowing this person is challenging, this person is difficult. What else can you expect? And in this way, by lowering our expectations, we can protect ourselves. By just knowing that people are going to disappoint us, people are going to be difficult, we won't be so upset when it happens. In fact, if you have this perception, okay, people are going to annoy me, people are going to be difficult, then your mind is already prepared, and you might be pleasantly surprised when they don't. So this is another strategy you could use. I'm going to talk for maybe about 10 more minutes and then we'll have a break. I'm going to tell another story because stories are fun. But before I do, I'm just going to mention the idea of applying some antidotes and why this is important. It makes sense when the story comes. So the Buddha gave 5 methods of dealing with anger and resentment. Different to the one we just encountered, and this is applying antidotes. So you probably know these people who've been involved in Buddhism for a bit. You'll know metta, yeah? You'll know karuna, compassion. So loving kindness, first of all, people who don't know much about Buddhism, is the first antidote that we apply to an angry mind. Metta, loving kindness. You give this person loving kindness. It sounds so easy, when you recite the Metta Sutta or you practice loving kindness and you're like, okay, I'm just going to give everyone loving kindness except for that person who's really annoying. So the Buddha says if you practice metta like this, then it's not metta, because it's not pure. You have resentment still in your heart. Loving kindness is loving kindness to everyone. So I'm talking about these antidotes here, but I'm just putting a little warning on them, saying, you've got to be careful. If you've still got a lot of resentment, if you haven't changed your perception, if you haven't lowered your expectations, if you haven't kind of tried to look at this situation differently, still metta is going to be difficult for you to perform. Same with karuna, compassion. It's going to be difficult sometimes to have compassion for someone who is suffering with their problems, who makes your life difficult. It's going to be difficult to generate that love, that feeling of wanting to help them. So if you know your Brahma Viharis, those people who've got metta, karuna, what do you think would come next? It doesn't in this list. So mudita is sympathetic joy, joy in other people's happiness. Why? If you've got anger or resentment in your mind towards someone, it's really hard to enjoy their happiness. It's if you don't like someone and they win the lottery, you're like, wonderful, you know. So it doesn't come there in this list. Instead, what comes next is equanimity, upekkha. Equanimity is looking on with an even mind, a mind that doesn't get pulled one way or another, just even, slightly detached, just chilled, okay? This person is difficult, I'm cool. So this is the third thing in that list. This is one of the antidotes. The fourth thing in this list is ignore them. I know. It makes perfect sense. Why don't we just put this at the beginning of the talk so that we can just deal with people that way? And it seems like this is not a very Buddhist approach. Just ignore them. Don't even try to generate compassion. Don't even try to generate love. Just ignore them. But actually, this is a very sophisticated strategy and it's full of wisdom. Because if we aren't able to generate love, if we aren't able to generate compassion, if we can't even chill out about this person, then the best thing that we can do is to ignore them. Otherwise, these unwholesome states will appear in our mind. Anger will overwhelm us. If we keep on interacting with this person, this object of aversion, we can keep on generating these horrible, bad states in our own mind. The best thing for us to do is to simply ignore them. And this is a strategy for people who are really difficult. Psychopaths, workplace psychopaths, real-life psychopaths, office bullies, narcissists, egomaniacs. The best thing to do is just to ignore these people, because otherwise we just get sucked into this toxic vortex. And so in some situations it's very important to have this wisdom to know that you can just step away and ignore. So it's a useful strategy. The fifth strategy in this list is to understand the law of karma. So karma is our actions and their results. So we know that our own actions produce certain results. And other people also experience actions and results. When people are conditioned in their life, that is an action, there will be a result. Our conditioning causes us to see things in a certain way, to behave in a certain way. In the same way, we understand all beings abide because of their karma, because of their actions. They sink and swim according to their actions. They reap the results of their actions. So do we. This is why it's important to know that we need to protect ourselves first, so that our actions don't create unwholesome results. And when it comes to dealing with other people, we just accept their results are because of their actions. It's because of their conditioning, it's because of their upbringing, because of their parents, because of their status, because of all these things. This is what makes this person difficult, challenging. In this way we start to pick apart this idea of them being a person who is inherently bad. We start to see them as a whole range of situations, events, consequences of place, time, influences, lifestyle, culture, all these things combine to make people's karma. So there are five antidotes that we can kind of apply to difficult people. The reason I mention this now is because of the story I'm about to tell, which is about my favourite character in the Buddhist canon. This is a difficult person called Kali. Have you ever heard this story before of Kali the maid, Kali the slave, and her mistress, Videhika? So Kali the maid is a very good servant. She gets up early, she works hard, and then her mistress has a good reputation. She's a nice mistress, a good person, and Kali the maid one day starts thinking, hang on a second, does my mistress have a good reputation because she's a good person, or because I'm a good servant? Is there some anger in her? Is there some unwholesome states? But because I do my job well, it doesn't come out. So you can see Kali is perhaps a slightly difficult person because she thinks, let's see if I can make my mistress angry. Why don't I test her to see if there's any anger in her, to see if this reputation is deserved or not. And so Kali doesn't get up the next morning. And then the mistress comes and says, what are you doing? Why aren't you awake? And Kali's like, oh, no reason. And you think, Kali, you're being very difficult. But the mistress kind of gets a little, maybe starts to get a little bit tetchy. And Kali thinks, ooh, maybe she will get angry. Why don't I test her a little bit further? And so she doesn't get up the next morning. And of course the mistress comes in and says, Kali, what's going on? Starts to get a bit angry. Maybe she says some bad words to Kali. And Kali's like, nothing, no reason. So the mistress, her unarisen anger has started to appear. The next day Kali doesn't get up either. And this time the mistress gets upset and yells at her and says some bad words. And then Kali's like, well, there it is. This mistress does have anger in her heart. It does come out. Why don't I test her a little more? And so the next day she doesn't get up. The mistress this time gets so angry she hits her with a pot or something. And Kali starts to bleed. She starts to bleed. And she goes around the village and she says, look what she did to me. This mistress who you said had a good reputation as being kind and gentle, look at what she's done to me. She's beaten me. She's made me bleed. And so, of course, the mistress, as I said before, loses her reputation. So this is a consequence of anger and irritation, yeah? You're dealing with a difficult person and you become even worse as a result. You know, the mistress, who is the difficult person in this situation? Is it the one who just doesn't wake up and get out of bed? Or is it the one who goes around hitting someone? You know? So you've got to be careful when you come to think about yourself and your own interactions with difficult people, that you don't become worse than them. So we need to apply these strategies, this changing of perception, these lowering of expectations, of ludicrous optimism, of applying appropriate antidotes. Otherwise, anger can overwhelm the mind. And if it overwhelms the mind, as it did with Videhika, the mistress, she becomes the worst person, you know, a person who beats people. So this is the potential that negative states have in our mind when we're dealing with angry people. So it's easy to kind of say, practice metta. It's much harder to maintain these states. So all of the Buddhist path is about preventing unwholesome states from arising. So you prevent negativity from appearing in your mind, and you abandon any unwholesome states that you already have there, like ill will towards a person. And then you need to cultivate good, wholesome qualities, loving kindness, compassion, joy in their good qualities. The tricky thing, of course, is maintaining that positive emotion, positive, wholesome states of mind. But this is the most important thing that we need to develop on the Buddhist path, because if we don't maintain those states, we will become like the Dehika, the mistress. These unarisen, unwholesome states will suddenly pop up in our minds, and then we have to start all over again, abandoning, preventing them from appearing in the future, cultivating those wholesome states again, trying to maintain them. So we need to maintain these wholesome states. How do we maintain these wholesome states? We need to make our mind bigger than it is already. We need to make our mind broad, vast, immeasurable. So some of you know the instructions for practicing metta. In English, you make your mind abundant, exalted, immeasurable, without hostility and without ill will. They're called the Brahmaviharis, they're called the immeasurables, they're called these boundless states because they're so vast. To finish up with 5 quick similes that the Buddha taught in the simile of the saw, Majjhima Nikaya number 21, where the Buddha was talking to a bunch of monks who were being verbally abused by people. So he says, you need to make your mind vast. You need to make your mind full of love, full of kindness, full of compassion. When you do this, a little bit of anger that drops into your mind from a difficult person is not going to make a difference. So this is the strategy here with making your mind vast, boundless, through the cultivation of the Brahmaviharis, the 4 states of compassion, of metta, compassion, sympathetic joy, equanimity. When you have these states, the mind is very vast, and we cultivate it through meditation. The first image he uses is a person who comes along and he says, got a shovel in his hand, he says, I am going to make this earth non-existent. And he gets the shovel and he starts digging. And he thinks, okay, I can just keep digging away the earth. But the earth is vast. There's a lot of it. You're going to have to dig a very long time, but you've still got all the earth still around you. So you can't possibly dig the earth away. In the same way, when we have a mind full of love and compassion, people can't just come along and dig it away. Difficult people can't just come along with a shovel, a tiny little shovel, and expect to remove all the dirt, all the earth from the world. Impossible. In the same way, when people come at us who are difficult, who are problematic, the Buddha uses another image. It's like drawings in the air. Someone painting a drawing in the air. Is it possible that this paint will stick to the air? No. Nothing can stick to the air like that. You just try to put it up there, it just falls down. It doesn't even stick. In the same way we become Teflon. Nothing sticks when we've got a broad mind, a vast mind. Nothing sticks. A difficult person comes along, throws some difficulty at us, doesn't stick, slides straight off. The third image the Buddha uses is a person who approaches the river Ganges with a small grass torch, thinking, I shall set fire to this river. But the river Ganges is vast and quite wet. So anyone who comes along with this tiny grass torch trying to set the river on fire is going to find that that fire is quickly put out by this vast river. The fourth image is of a catskin bag. No one knows what it means, so I'm skipping it. The fifth image Very difficult image, very difficult. So the fifth image is what the simile of the saw is named after, and it is a person who's being hacked limb by limb. And the Buddha says, you know, if people are going to verbally assault you, you know, just imagine, you know, being hacked apart limb by limb. You don't generate any, this is the ideal, yeah? This is the perfect person. This isn't like mundane beings like you and I. This is someone who has abundant good qualities in them, who's full of love, who's full of metta, who's full of kindness, and nothing can touch them. You can hack off their limb and they're like, thank you, I love you. This is the image that the Buddha uses, the simile of the saw, someone hacking off limb after limb, and this person doesn't generate a single bit of hate in their heart towards these people who are killing them. Now, of course, this is a story. It's not the Buddha saying, if someone should hit you in the face, just say you love them. No, you've got to protect yourself. You've got to be, you know, you've got to be wise. And it's important to note that in this context, the sutta was only talking about verbal abuse. So if someone's yelling at you, you know, you can put it up with it. If someone's hacking your limbs apart, maybe it's more complicated. But the point is that when our mind is full of these good qualities, when our mind has a lot of love and compassion in our heart, we're able to withstand a lot of difficulty. We're able to endure the difficult people that we encounter. And so, to finish with that image tonight of a torch extinguished in the river, you know, nothing can touch you when you have a mind that is being developed. How do we develop that mind? We need to practice meditation. We need to develop these meditations on loving kindness, on compassion, develop them so that our mind is vast, so that when someone comes along, it doesn't touch our minds anymore. Our mind is so big, it's like a drop in the ocean, can't affect us. And this is the mind of the Buddha, this is the mind of the enlightened beings, and it's possible for us, mere mortals, to experience this vastness in this life. And so the instructions for that would be another talk at another time. And so I offer this rather long talk after all to you in the hope that it may be of some benefit to you. We're going to take a quick 10-minute break and then come back and we'll do something different.